Thank you so much for joining us today. I am excited to welcome you to today's presentation of the CURC webinar series entitled Integrating Reduction and Reuse into Messaging. My name is Eric Halverson. I'm the program coordinator for the College and University Recycling Coalition, and I'll be your moderator for today's program. For those of you not familiar with CURC, the College and University Recycling Coalition is a member-based organization that works to grow collegiate recycling and waste reduction efforts by fostering technical information exchange and networking opportunities between the staff and student leaders and anyone on college and university campuses implementing zero waste or waste reduction programs, things of that kind. So today's program is part of our free CURC webinar series, which is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational and educational topics related to collegiate recycling and sustainable materials management. So today's program is the 5th webinar in our 2021 series. Thank you all for joining again and welcome. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, we recommend you visit support.zoom.us to troubleshoot any technical issues. And to avoid background noise, we've placed all but our panelists' lines on mute. So if you want to submit questions, you can use the question and answer section of the Zoom dashboard below on your screen. We will read as many of these as possible out loud to our speakers, and they'll answer them live at the end of each presentation. But any ones that we don't get to live and to speak about, we'll try to answer them as well as we can, and you can reach out to the speakers afterwards. Copies of today's presentation slides will be available to download and a recording available to stream within the next day or so from the CURC website, which is www.curc3r.org. Now, CURC has always focused on so much more than recycling, and these case studies today are just another example of how the work of sustainability on campus or facilities or waste management are connected to so much more than what appears in the bin. We wanted to ask a couple of schools, what are you doing to promote waste reduction or reuse first to reach the top of the zero waste hierarchy? You as our audience chose to have this topic, and we are thrilled to welcome our speakers today. First, we will hear from Leah Graham, the Outreach Recycling Coordinator from Kent State University's Facilities, Planning and Operations and Office of Sustainability. And then we will welcome Courtney Martin, Waste Reduction Coordinator with Western Kentucky University's Department of Facilities Management. Now let's introduce our first presenter. Leah Graham is an environmental educator who lives on an old street with tall oaks near the banks of the Cuyahoga River, a lifelong Northeast Ohioan. She has been working in the fields of environmental education, sustainability, and higher education for over 15 years. Leah earned a master's researching nesting ecology of diamondback terrapins in the Chesapeake and a bachelor's in environmental biology and a graduate certificate in scientific illustration. Since 2013, she has served Kent State University's Office of Sustainability as the Outreach Recycling Coordinator. So welcome, Leah.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with everyone and so honored to talk. And can you see my screen? Oh.
It's still loading a little bit.
Okay.
All right, yeah, we can see it, great.
Okay, so I just want to jump right in about Kent State. We are a large four-year public institution, research campus. We're about an hour away from Cleveland and 20 minutes away from Akron, larger metropolitan areas, and the city of Kent has about 30,000 people, so we are a very collaborative town. There's a very collaborative town-gown relationship. And just a little bit about our Office of Sustainability. Our mission is to grow sustainable, equitable, and inclusive future by implementing transformational sustainability practices into our facilities, planning, operations, natural environment, and culture. And so There's two of us in the office. Melanie Knowles, my supervisor, has been there since her position was created in 2009. And I've been here part-time since 2013. And then depending on the semester, we have interns that help us. And so just what I'd like to talk to you about today is what we use to craft our messages and the waste hierarchy. And so the four things that I want to mention are our peers, our place, staying positive, and purpose. And so the free information we use to inform this messaging, and then I'll give examples of traditional and non-traditional ways we share this. So our overarching goal is to connect our campus community with whatever they are passionate about in sustainability. The first strategy we use for implementing our messaging is community-based social marketing. And this was developed by Dr. Doug McKenzie Moore. And he has a great book called Fostering Sustainable Behavior, if you haven't heard of it or read it. And what he talks about and mentions that what creates people to want to change their behavior is that it should be normalized. And so you're more likely to do something if your peers are doing it. And then Malcolm Gladwell also mentions this in his book, Tipping Point. And so that's what we use first is we want to normalize the behavior and we want to show that peers are doing it on campus. And so we do this in a couple different ways. We like to show our mascot as much as we can. We also like to show a cross section of our students, faculty, and staff engaged in any sustainable behavior. A lot of these examples are waste reduction behaviors, all the way up to our president. And we share this on social media. We were losing a lot of this throughout the years. And so we wanted to create a more permanent place for these images to be shown. So working with our university communications and marketing, we have a permanent tag board on our website. This was previously our Recyclemania tag board that we just switched this year to be a more encompassing tag board for any sustainable behavior with the flashes go green. We also feature students, faculty, and staff in our newsletters. And then we have a permanent place for displaying information on our spotlights. The second point that we like to use in our messaging is connecting people to place. So we want to connect them to the environment where we live. They're more likely to take stewardship of an area. We want to connect them to our community, our campus community, and then our regional community. There's a very strong flashes take care of flashes presence. And then prosperity. So we want to connect them with the quality of life, how their quality of life is. And there's a lot of studies about the outdoor economy and where people want to live and work is based on quality of life. And something else that we've noticed is to be grateful and give gratitude and thank people for what they're doing. And then on our social media posts, we always do a pre, during, and post event posts. So this is an example of some social media posts that are very popular, just a simple thank you. We want to connect them to the community, showing where these clothing donations are going, how they've helped our campus and community. And then a thank you, how students are protecting the environment on campus. And they are popular. Our average posts are about 300 to 500, depending on the year. So you can see these do well above average. And this is an example of our pre-event poster on the left, and then on your right is an example of a follow-up. We're sharing the totals. So we're sharing where the clothing is going. It's going directly to the County Clothing Center. It's benefiting our community. A portion of it is also going to the winter warm-up station on campus where anyone can get coats and clothing that they need for winter. And so the past couple of years, we've gotten anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pounds. And we're showing what's going on during social media, like what is happening during the event. So from our president doing a story on Instagram to students getting the bins set up, and then our screen displays. And similarly, what we can say on our message depends on the media. So just an example of how much we can share on a digital screen versus how much we can share on a poster that's going directly on the bin, with us emphasizing the waste hierarchy and sharing where the bins are going for reuse and where they're going for recycling. And then our posts of during and after the event. And then about 75% of the bras that we collect are sent for reuse, and about 25% are sent for recycling. So also something we keep it, the event is called bra recycling. So maybe just to not confuse people. And then we're sharing pictures of what's going on during the event. This is just a snapshot of our statistics that we can get through analytics for free. And so just knowing how many people see our tweets from the impressions versus how many tweets we send out per year, we know if something does above average. We really focused on the waste hierarchy messaging during Campus Race to Zero Waste. And so that's very helpful. And then having the Campus Race to Zero Waste statistics, our game day challenge statistics is all helpful to share. So the first 2 points, again, we want to normalize the behavior connecting to peers. We want to connect people to the place. And then this is the third point I wanted to talk about, which I learned from one of CURC's webinars and speakers, Brenda Pulley from Keep America Beautiful. There's 2 points that I just want to share. Keep America Beautiful did a study where they wanted to know how people identified in their recycling behaviors. And so you can see about 38% identified as avid recyclers, 52% were sometimes recyclers, they recycled when convenient, and 10% sometimes recycle, they almost never recycle. And so what I took away from this and what she shared is that where we want to focus our efforts are on the middle of the road recyclers and the avid recyclers. So we want to reinforce that behavior of the people that are already doing the actions. They're going to become our mentors and leaders on campus. And then just getting more of the middle of the road people to engage in these behaviors. And then the second point she made was that Keep America Beautiful did an ad campaign with the Public Ad Council, and it was an award-winning campaign. And what they found, what motivates people to recycle is the hope that this can turn, that any recyclable can turn into something else. And so they found that people are more likely to do that when the message is positive. So this can turn into a bicycle, or a water bottle can turn into a bench or jeans. And that message would engage with, would connect people, and they would be more likely to engage in the recycling behavior. So what we took away from this is that we want to keep our message positive when we want to talk to people about behavior change. And then we did something similar on our campus. We wanted to see where we were for our baseline. So you can see in 2014, we have 32% that identified as avid recyclers and 57% as like middle of the road recyclers. And there's some people that 11% almost never recycle. And then this changed a little bit in 2017. We have more people identifying as avid recyclers. And then how people identify in their behaviors is a little bit different than what they think is important from below. And then we're using data that we have. And so we had this question. And so I think it ties into behaviors. So you can see that in 2017, 76% thought it was important that Kent State be a leader in sustainability. So I know putting together a survey can take a lot of time. So even if you don't have a survey right now, something that people could do is use Princeton Review's College Hopes and Worries survey. So 75% of college students say that their school's commitment to the environment affects their choice. And so that's something that can be used already, that's normalizing the behavior on your campus. And so how are we sharing this information on campus? So we're sharing it in all the traditional ways and on our websites, on our press releases, and then social media, and then also in our non-traditional ways. Anytime we're tabling, we have a trivia game. When we talk with students at volunteer opportunities or in the classroom. And then we also want to reinforce and engage those students that are those avid recyclers. They're already engaging in these behaviors. We want to reinforce that behavior with them with the Get Caught Green-Handed campaign. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about and break this message down. We've used this for a couple years now, and it hasn't changed. There hasn't been much variation from it. So congratulations, you're on the team. So we want to normalize this behavior. We're letting everyone know that any action they take is contributing to our greater goal, helping us on campus, as well as helping our environment and people and where we live. And we use Flash, our mascot, also to normalize the behavior. We have the dates of when we want to see these behaviors listed, engaged. And so we're keeping it simple. This is used on social media and on our digital screens on campus. We just really want to focus and emphasize the reduce, reuse, recycle, waste hierarchy. And then we also are sharing this information in trivia and Snapchat and through our main Kent State pages. We're also trying to keep students engaged and have fun games for them during Campus Race to Zero Waste. And so this is one game that we really want to emphasize. Recycling is the last step. And so that's why it's important to reduce and reuse. During Game Day Challenge, our students will play games and talk to fans in tailgating areas. And the last point I want to make, so we are normalizing the behavior with peers. We're connecting students to place. We're keeping our message positive. And the last point is that we want to have a purpose. We want to tell the story of what and how, why people are doing what they're doing and how it's helping us, why it's important. And so from grant writing workshops I've been in, there's 4 points to storytelling. There's people, place, plot, and purpose. But for this message, and what I want to share is how we integrate it into our messaging campaigns, that we want to focus on our peers, place, staying positive, and purpose. And we always try to we are always as transparent as possible in everything we do. And this is just an example. It's one of my favorite examples of a circular economy on campus. So our fashion school is one of the top fashion schools in the nation. Our faculty are very engaged and collaborative in sustainability, and with us, they approached us wanting to do something with their fabric scraps on campus. So we wanted to know how much they generated. The students and faculty made this display to explain what was going on, why we were collecting the scraps. A portion of the scraps go to a local nonprofit, the Socially Responsible Sweatshop of Kent, Ohio. It's a great organization where they take items that would have gone to the landfill, fabric, and they make it into anything you can think of. These are meditation pillows, they have masks, aprons, pet beds. About 13 pounds of our fabric scraps go into one of those meditation pillows. But they can't handle the amount we generate, which is about 4,000 pounds per year. So we work with a local recycling vendor that picks up our fabric scraps to be recycled. So with storytelling, there's a lot that we want to get across in our message. And this is easier to do in our press releases or case studies or awards. But one way that we found is easy to share on social media is working with our university communications and marketing. They've put together videos for us. They've said under 2 minutes is a good timeline. And so that's another way that we share and are able to share our stories and really sharing the impact everyone is making on campus. Throw and go is one of our biggest, I think, waste reduction impacts, where we can divert waste from the landfill. About 100,000 pounds are diverted every year during move out from spring break through the end of the year. And so we incorporate this in our Campus Race to Zero Waste messaging, which is usually spring break is when it begins. And what always begins on spring break, but spring break is either the last or second week of Campus Race to Zero Waste for us. And so we share this in our newsletters, on social media. And then the last example I want to talk about is just a different way of thinking creatively about our messaging. It's a project called Concrete Poetry. Kent is located on the Cuyahoga River. We're kind of near the bottom of that U in Northeast Ohio. And in 2019, it was the 50th anniversary of commemorating the last time the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. And so it was a celebration of the Cuyahoga River, how far we've come, the resilience of all the species that have come back to the area, all of the different ways people connect with the river. And so we worked, and concrete poetry is exactly what it says. It's poetry and designs that appear on the cement when wet. And so we worked with 2 typography professors in visual communication and design, their students. There's about 60 typography students, and the Wick Poetry Center at Kent State to create poems that would go on the ground and the different ways people connect with the river. So we've been wanting to do this for a couple years since we had seen it, and we were excited to do it. It seemed to tie in perfectly with the Cuyahoga River. And then we also wanted to include facts as to why it was important in the environmental and sustainability movement. A visual communication design professor made these designs for us that we were able to share, and it was also the Earth Month design that year. So the Wick Poetry Center poems called River Stanzas, they had gone out and done workshops in the community and were collecting poems from community members and worldwide. They had the poems, the students in the typography class transferred these poems into these typography designs that you can see. Portions of the designs were selected that would work best on the substrate, and so that they would appear. This is an installation picture and what it looked like finished. And so it was nice that students used indicator species like mayfly of good water quality, like the mayfly, and they really shared all the different ways people can connect to the Cuyahoga River. They were also installed downtown in the city of Kent. There was a gallery show for students, so more information could be shared, more of their designs could be shared. They were given awards. They were popular posts for us on social media. And it also tied in with one of our Earth Month speakers that year, which is a park ranger talking about the history of the Cuyahoga River. And it still continues to this day. The students' designs were made into a book that's for sale at the Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And even, so the anniversary happened in the summer in June 2019. So even if people weren't on campus or missed it, they could still see the designs. They're still on our website and see what everyone has worked on. And so we incorporate black squirrels, our unofficial mascot on campus. We incorporate that into our place. We want to talk about the waste hierarchy. We're normalizing the behavior using golden flashes, our mascot. And so just a recap of our philosophy that we use and strategies we use for our waste reduction messaging. We want to normalize the behavior with peers. We're connecting people to place. We're keeping our message positive, and then we want to connect them with how and why what they're doing is important. And thank you.
All right, thank you, Leah. That was, so awesome to see, from the philosophy down to the poetry, even on your campus. We have a couple questions that we're going to answer fast. The first one comes from someone asking about your social media followers. How do you tend to bring people to your social media? What ways have you managed to let them know that you're on these platforms and get them looking there?
I think one of the biggest ways we do this is through Destination Kent State, which is when students arrive in the summer and see what campus is like. So they're new students, incoming students, transfer students, and we're tabling. And so that's their first introduction to us, that an Office of Sustainability exists. We're sharing that they can sign up for our newsletters. And then also we try to promote it off of our website, and anytime we interact with students in classes and our sustainability related student organizations on campus, we always try to let them know we're there. And something that we've been conscious about and have made a decision about every year is Instagram, which we know where students are at, and TikTok. And so we evaluate it every year with our university communications and marketing. And so just with our bandwidth of being a small office, we haven't made that jump yet to those platforms. But we share things on the main Kent State account, which can reach a lot more people than what we can on our social media accounts.
Thank you. And then one quick one before we move on. What is the technology, or where should people go to learn more about the concrete poetry material and how you did that?
It's we use Rainworks, which is a company based out of Seattle. So I think if you Google Rainworks, it'll show up. And it's a biodegradable spray, and it lasts about a month. And it depends on the substrate. Like you want an older substrate, like 3 to 5 years, it works best. And with it to be smooth, you want not a lot of larger conglomerate stones in it. But they have all that information on their website.
All right, awesome. Thank you. If we have time at the end, we'll circle back and we can answer some more questions. All right. Once again, as a reminder, if you have any questions, you should use the question and answer section of the Zoom dashboard to type this in. All right. Moving on to our second presenter, Courtney Martin. Courtney graduated from Western Kentucky University in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in sustainability and a minor in marketing. She has been a part of WKU facilities management for 5 years, and in that time, she has served in a variety of roles, from communications lead to COVID-19 supply manager, and now waste diversion coordinator. At WKU, she manages the composting, recycling, and waste reduction programs. She also leads the stadium recycling program, which engages student organizations in cleaning the football stadium or basketball arena after a home game. She is currently pursuing a master's of public administration in public and community health to expand her knowledge of public service and community well-being. So welcome, Courtney.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for being here today. So I'm with Western Kentucky University, and it is a medium-sized school about an hour outside of Nashville. So WKU is the third largest school in Kentucky and the third largest city. We have about 1,400 undergraduate students, 2,300 graduate students. And like a lot of state universities, we've been impacted by tight budgets and reduced enrollment. And that's just to give you guys some context that we run a lean department and we rely a lot on creativity and scrappy solutions. And WKU is best known for having a beautiful campus with tons of cherry blossom trees, white squirrels, and a memorable mascot. So that's Big Red, and he represents the spirit of the hill. And what my department oversees is all waste on campus, including recycling, composting, outreach. And our outreach includes the Game Day Recycling Challenge, the Stadium Cleanup Program, tabling presentations, and other campus outreach, and then also community advising. And for this presentation, I'm taking a really holistic approach to communication around reduce and reuse, because it has a whole lot of regional importance in our area. So Kentucky has limited recycling resources, and they vary greatly across the state. So I know some states have entities that oversee all recycling, but ours functions more as isolated programs scattered throughout the community. And the city of Bowling Green, where WKU is located, does not currently have curbside recycling or accessible community drop-offs. So we look at emphasizing reduce and reuse actions is very important, because whether students are walking 5 minutes to their apartment down the road or driving across the state, there's a chance that there's not going to be recycling resources at their location. So we want to make sure that we give people feasible steps to live a more environmentally friendly life, regardless of those recycling resources. So a theme you'll see throughout our department's messaging is the idea of waste less rather than recycle more. So that's one way that we center in the idea of upstream actions. So there's 3 main categories that we use to incorporate upstream messaging. We do it through our promos, our digital messaging, and our events. So about 3 years ago, as a department, we had a big push to center our promo items with the idea of upstream actions. So the saying we decided to go with was reduce your use, choose to reuse, to tie in those two terms and keep that at the focus of our reusable promo items. And then for our cutlery set, we also developed tags to help promote the knowledge that cutlery is not recyclable and that they can use a reusable set to reduce landfill waste. So that was a big push to try to use these items that we're already purchasing to help engage students to promote upstream diversion. And then since we run a scrappy program, we also try to use reclaimed promo items whenever possible. So each year we do back to school binders using binders that have been turned into our surplus department, printing out a nice cover for those, putting a waste less guide in them and giving those out to students. And we do this to promote reducing and reusing waste, but also to combat that idea that secondhand is less desirable than new. And another way we're doing this is Surplus had these athletics luggage tag stickers turned in, and we've been cutting out the logo portion. So we have reclaimed stickers at no cost to our department to hand out to students during homecoming. Another more traditional communication method is digital communication. So like most departments, we have social media content where we're sharing with students how to reduce and reuse different items. We stick with that theme of Waste Less Wednesday, but I think what is more impactful than these action graphics is why they should reduce and reuse. So right there is a graphic for an event we had a few years ago. It was a repair event called Fix It Fest. And while we were promoting the event, we incorporated different reasons why fixing items was important to help build commitment to attending that event and also fixing items outside of the event. So we broke that idea into 4 digestible pieces. That fixing items conserves virgin resources, reduces energy consumed through producing new items, saves money, and reduces unnecessary landfill waste. And another big part of our department is we always try to pair pictures with words because people consume information differently. And here are 2 other graphics from those events. You guys might be familiar with some of this core content, but we tried to demonstrate the difference between a linear economy and a circular economy, where we're fixing items, reducing and reusing, and then also the different steps in between buying items and using what you have, because there's lots of variation and middle ground. So we're trying to appeal to students that you don't have to be on one extreme or the other, but that there's a radical middle where they can make a huge difference. In our social media posts, we also try to emphasize the hierarchy in one place. From a previous CURC webinar about diversity, it kind of brought to my attention how privilege can play a role in some of the advice that we give. So we try to give several pieces of advice, ranging from good, better, best, or reduce, reuse, recycle. So no matter what circumstances or background someone's coming from, hopefully they can pick some part of the information and feel like that's a good part or good advice for their lifestyle. So this graphic on the left was developed before last Christmas, emphasizing the different ways to wrap gifts, with the best option being to give a non-material gift. And we did a similar sort of layout for Easter. And then lastly, with digital communication, we try to keep our website stocked with all sorts of digital resources. And one of the more creative ways we've done this is by developing printable bulletin boards. So if teachers, RAs, or anyone else in the community wants to have a waste reduction themed bulletin board, they can go to our website, hit print, and they have everything to complete that endeavor. So we have 7 bulletin boards in total, but 3 that I have pictured is our Fix It WKU bulletin board, What in Conservation, based off of an old meme, and then we did a Pinterest style bulletin board that highlights different ways that you can reuse old packaging items. And lastly, WKU likes to use events to communicate with our community. So we're often invited to be a part of community events, and because of the different recycling limitations, we try to use these events to promote holistic waste management and upstream intervention. And connecting with people individually is typically the best way to really make lasting behavior change. So we try to really capitalize on those events. So like many other sustainability and recycling departments, we do tabling events, and our tabling kit is actually called the Waste Less Fair. So we took the idea of reducing waste and developed a variety of carnival style games to correspond with that reduction behavior. So we have reusable ring toss, where students are throwing ring toss to get a reusable bottle. We have a reduce your waistline pledge that they can sign. We have a basketball recycling bin where they can toss different recyclables into the bin. And then we also have trash trivia. And those trivia questions a lot of times link back to what an impact our waste has, and then also those proper behaviors. So one question that typically ends up being a trick question is, which R is the most sustainable choice? Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's been really enlightening to me how many students don't have that foundational knowledge, that reducing is actually the best thing you can do from an environmental standpoint. So that's one way that we're able to engage students, but also promote learning and expand their knowledge. So here's the items up close that we use during that tabling. And then lastly, each year we get invited to be a part of an event for middle school students in the community called Streamside Field Day. So it's where all the local middle schools bring their students to a beautiful park next to a stream, and they compete in different activities about environmentalism. So the activity that we have developed for this event is called Shake It for Resource Conservation. And it was inspired by the game some people play at holidays, where there's a tissue box filled with ping pong balls and you attach it to your waist and you have to try to shake the ping pong balls out. So that was kind of where we started to develop this activity. So there's 4 rounds of the game, each round representing a different waste disposal option. So round 1, we represent traditional landfill waste disposal options, where resources are extracted, used, and then disposed of. For the second round, we incorporate recycling. For the third round, we demonstrate reuse. And then for the fourth round, we show that no resources are extracted, so reducing. And this will make a little bit more sense with the pictures and videos. So I'll show you a video of the first step.
Keep on shaking. Okay, we look at another one. How many are there? You're gonna lean back for it.
So from our experience, the middle schoolers absolutely love this step of the game. We have 4 of them represent the extract natural resources process. And as you can see, it's not easy. And we tie that back to the idea that extracting natural resources takes a lot of energy. And they get to physically experience how much energy it takes to extract natural resources. Then we demonstrate those resources being used to make goods, then the goods being disposed of, and then it going to the landfill. Now, this next video is from the second round, where there's also a recycling step. So you can kind of see from start to finish what goes on in the game. And this isn't perfect. If we get to do this in the future, I'd love to add an extra shopping bag between the recycling can and the trash bin, but things do tend to get a little crazy on Streamside Field Day. Okay, so the third round is reuse. So we have the students either break into small groups or pair off, and they practice passing their natural resources back and forth to one another, taking a step back each time, similar to an egg toss. And whenever the resource ball falls on the ground, that's when it's disposed of. And we do this to show them that, one, reuse items as many times as possible, but most items have a natural expiration date where they can't be reused anymore. And then the last round is reduce. So at this point, the students are exhausted because they've been running around for the first 3 rounds. So we have everybody take a seat in the grass, and the moderator talks about what a beautiful environment we're in that day, and that reduce at its core means that the natural resources of rock, water, soil, all of it gets to stay in nature where it belongs, to be enjoyed by people and the animals we share our world with. So it's just a really nice centering reflection activity at the end of the day. And although we've done this activity with middle schoolers, I share it with you because I think it's one of the more successful ways we've went about really explaining the process of waste diversion management. And I think it could be altered a little bit to be fun for college students. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Got a couple questions for you coming in. First off, on your recyclable cutlery, did you provide any guidance or supplies for people to clean them, and guided instructions on how to reuse them? And how did you give those away? Did you give those away at events or to people living in dorms?
So we typically use that as an event promo item, and we didn't go into a lot of detail on cleaning, but that's one reason we decided to go with a plastic set over a bamboo set, is students are typically a little bit more educated on how to clean plastic items than bamboo or materials they're less familiar with.
Okay, and the other question comes about the resource center that you showed. Are those typically out in public areas or at events?
Is that referring to the tabling kit, or I'm trying to think? Might be.
I wasn't sure either.
Okay.
But maybe you can speak on the tabling kits.
Yes, so the items that we have assembled to be like our waste less fare, those are used in a guided atmosphere at tabling events. We have had different reduce centers and athletic venues, but those are also manned stations, just to make sure everybody knows what's going on and what bin those items go in.
Absolutely. And going to your tabling, I noticed that you also had the basketball hoop above the recycling bin, and Leah had the goalposts at the football games. I was like, we just need to put sports things on these bins and people will use them. They'll use them right. I think that's the message for today. But more seriously, here's a good question about zero waste messaging, especially on when you bring the messaging to people. How do you balance keeping simplified messaging or call to actions with sharing important information like background and motivation that might be a little bit too much for people to absorb all at once? How do you strike that balance in your messaging?
For me or for Leah, or for the both of us?
For the both of you. If you want to start, and then if Leah wants to also share on that question, I'd love to hear from them.
I think it's a tricky one, and it really, for us, it depends on what the goal of that day is. Like if it's a reuse event, we focus a lot on the why behind that behavior. And we typically encounter that some people have some sort of basic foundation knowledge on how to reuse items, but just emphasizing why they might need to move from that lean middle to the enthused reduce and reuse, position.
Absolutely. Leah, if you're there, do you want to offer something?
Yeah, I agree with Courtney. It is tricky where we're putting the message and how much we can share. I mean, the main message we want to get across is reduce, reuse, recycle, which we can do on our digital screens. And we try to add in more like rethink, refuse into on our bags. And then we try to put a lot more information into our website for when we talk and engage with students. That's where we can have more of a conversation and really get into the behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. And on both your campuses, you know, the goal is to create a culture of sustainability. And I know that both you kind of touched on place, you know, like thinking about the environment, thinking about the importance of why we're doing these things. Maybe if you could start, Courtney, with that, creating that culture of sustainability. Like, how have you seen the reaction in your students? Maybe share a couple examples of where you see it coming to fruition for you.
So I'll be honest that our program is in kind of a rebuild period right now after COVID, but the main way I've gotten to interact with students is through game day operations. And I think that right now, the main emotion I'm getting is just appreciation that recycling is happening on game day, especially since it's been scaled back in our community. So just a lot of enthusiasm, like there's actually recycling here, and that's exciting to people. But I know a lot of communities, thankfully, are not in that position.
Yeah, but it sounds like an extra barrier, an extra important reason why you at WKU might need to do that if the county doesn't have that kind of system, at least on a household basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what about you, Leah, talking about place and talking about creating a culture of sustainability? Where do you see that showing up on campus?
Well, it's nice with our surveys, we can see how it's changed. We were a little bit behind in getting another survey out, but we can see that what people think is important, knowing that 50% of people are already avid recyclers. Where we really hear a lot from students is asking about food composting. And so what we've been able to do is put in a grind to energy system, an anaerobic digester. And so students are very interested in food waste in that diversion. So we're able to talk about our grind to energy and how it's higher up on the food waste hierarchy than composting, why we're doing it. We talk about, when we first approach them, about reducing the generation of food scraps and materials, which our culinary services does. Then we talk about a lot of the food donation programs on campus where we were able to divert waste from that. And we get students from all over, but it's great. They're interested in transportation and biking, and it's a very town-gown collaboration. So there's a lot of overlap there, traveling from our bike path on campus to the bike path along the river. So that's a way they connect with that in Northeast Ohio.
Absolutely. And finally, I think we can leave on this question. How are you using the issue of contamination in recycling, talking about the difficulties of recycling on the back end in your messaging about reduction and reuse? Because those things might be the focus because recycling is becoming so much more expensive and harder to do. Courtney, do you want to start?
I can. At least in our program, we haven't had the opportunity to really commingle the ideas of reduction and reuse as it relates to contamination. It's something that we should definitely look towards in the future, but it's kind of been separate messaging, recycling, contamination, but first emphasizing reduction and reuse.
Yeah, it's been the same on our campus. From waste audits, that's been helpful. We know what our top 3 recyclables in the trash end up being: plastic bottles, cardboard, and paper. And so we really emphasize that on what we want to see get into our recycling bins. But then again, with the game of how many times can this be recycled, that's kind of the last step. We don't want to we're encouraging recycling behavior, but it's the last step we want to see. And that's why reducing and reusing is a lot more important than recycling. We know we just switched over recycling vendors and we had a big change in what is accepted in our recycling, and explaining that instead of plastics 1 through 7s, it's now plastic bottles and jugs. And so that's been one of our most popular seen posts. I think it's been seen 10,000 times when it was first shared. And so we know people, and our recycling page, which is now renamed to Zero Waste, is one of the top, it's the top visited page from our website. So people are interested in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so good that you get that information out early when they get to campus, you know, bringing them to your social media and bringing them to your resources. People can see them when they first get there. And on a final note, I love the graphic that you shared, Courtney, of the linear economy, the recycling economy, which has a few circles around, and then the circular economy, which keeps going and going and never reaches that bin. So if y'all have more questions, please feel free to reach out to our speakers. Their information will be on our website in the next day if they can't answer your questions while we're still here live. I have a couple announcements before you go, so stick around and you can hear about what CURC will be up to in the next couple months. So we will finish our webinar series for 2021 with more focus upstream on diversion. So for December 16th, mark your calendars. That's diversion upstream, working with purchasing to prevent waste in particular. Also, we are sending out the annual CURC members survey to learn about you, our audience, and what we can do better as an organization. We're asking you where you would like to see CURC go in the future. So that will be sent out your way in the next couple of weeks. So please take a few minutes to fill that out. It'll really help us moving forward. Also, our annual members meeting will be in January. So mark the date for January 20th, and we will send out more information about how to join and register for that. We hope you can join us. It's an opportunity to get together, network, and really talk together about what we want to see CURC do in 2022. Once you leave the webinar, you will be prompted to take a quick survey about your experience with the presentation today. Please share your thoughts with us so we can improve moving forward. And don't forget to register for the December webinar. One last time, join me in thanking Leah and Courtney for their amazing presentations and all the hard work they do on their campuses. It was great to hear from you today. And once again, look for the presentations on our website, and a recording will be available if you want to revisit things on the CURC website, and you'll get an email about that availability as well within the next day or so. That's www.curc3r.org. All right, have a good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining.